Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to head down to Australia once again, and we're going to return to a brewery that's featured on the channel a number of times before. So I've had some really nice beers from these guys over the last little while. I only really discovered this brewery since I moved over here to Hong Kong, and their beers come up here quite regularly. But if people were to ask me about this brewery, I would say that they're probably best known for the different kinds of New England hazy, whatever you want to call them, IPAs. But they also do some very nice fruity, juicy, modern, Nordic, smoothie, whatever we're going to call them, sour beers. But the beer we're going to have a look at today is one of their latest releases here in Hong Kong. It is a style that I know these guys can do very well, but this one is a little bit different to the beers we've had in that particular category from them before. So needless to say, I'm very curious to see how this one's going to turn out. Hopefully it's as good as the other beers I've had from them before. Hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always, I hope that you guys watching enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to head to Australia. Like I said, we're going to go to the state of New South Wales, and we're going to go to the city of Sydney and to the area of Botany, which has a number of good breweries, but one we're going to have a look at today is the wonderful Drop Brewing Company. So this particular beer is called Amen to It. It comes in at 5% ABV, and they're describing this one as a lassie Gose. So we've had many different kind of fruited, smoothie, whatever we're going to call them, sour beers from Drop Brewing Company before, but this is the first one I've seen that has been termed a lassie Gose. And the lassie Goses, the first time I encountered one of these was actually Omnipoil in Stockholm, and their takes on this style were really pretty damn top notch. And I know that Drop are very good with the fruited sour beers, so this one really just sparked my curiosity because I know what these guys are capable of. But this is yet another beer that I picked up at the wonderful Gur Beer in the One Mall in Tsim Sha Tsui here in Hong Kong. So if you find yourself up here, then I do recommend that you go and check them out. They've always got a really interesting selection of beers from different places in the world, and yeah, lovely staff, very knowledgeable, and just a great place to go and hang out for a wee bit as well. I always end up talking to these guys for quite a wee while when I go, and I spend far too much money there. But yeah, I'll put the link to their Facebook page and their Instagram in the video description for you below, so do check them out. But let's crack on with this beer then and see what it has in store for us. So, as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting though, just fast forward. All the usual links can be found in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Drop Brewing Company before, and we will no doubt return to these guys again at some point in the very near future because I love the beers that they do. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support that you give is massively appreciated, and remember, you can go into the channel homepage and search for beer using the geography tagging system. So just go in there, use the little search bar, put in your hometown, state, county, province, whatever you like. If I've reviewed beers from the area that you search for, they will pop up. Failing that, you can check out the playlist of beers from different countries. You'll find this one in the Australian playlist along with a number of other things. That's being added to very regularly, of course, at the moment, because we do get a lot of Aussie stuff up here in Hong Kong, which I'm very happy about. But do check out the playlist of beers from other countries as well, because there are some very interesting things in those as well. But yeah, let's go on to my brewery notes then, and I'll tell you a wee bit about Drop Brewing once again then. So, as I mentioned to you earlier, Drop Brewing are based in the Botany area of Sydney, very close to the airport, and this company was founded back in mid-2016, although they opened their doors a little bit later in 2019, and the four people behind this company are Clay Grant, Meg Barbitz, Nick Calder-Scholes and Liam Quinn. So Clay has a background in food catering, and he shared the idea with Meg, his wife, that he wanted to start a brewery, and she was very supportive of this, and she had worked in tech with startup companies, and she liked the idea of them having their own startup together. But Nick is originally from New Zealand, and he was the original head brewer at the Garden Brewery in Zagreb in Croatia, which is where he met Meg and Clay, who were on holiday visiting Meg's family. But Liam is Nick's best friend, and he was in the army but also has a lot of experience from the hospitality sector. So Clay and Meg have founded the company officially in mid-2016 when they designed the brand and started planning the company. And they actually sold their house to fund the brewery, but also decided to use a little bit of the money to go and visit Croatia. And this was where they met Nick, who would join their venture a little bit later in 2018. But the idea behind the name One Drop is that a single idea or action can change the course of everything, and that was certainly the case with this brewery. But the brewery itself is located in an old paper mill, and they sourced the brewing equipment from the Canadian company DME, who I think went bust if I'm not mistaken. But this includes a 12 hectolitre brew kit and 6 24 hectolitre fermentation vessels, and they now also have a canning line from East Coast Canning in the US. And over the last few years, they've continued to expand this brewery infrastructure and just get their beers out there a little bit more, develop different styles and do different things. But yeah, the four guys behind this company have a lot of different expertise, and it seems to have gone very, very well for them. But these guys are potentially one of the best breweries in Australia at the moment, particularly if you like your New England hazies and your kind of modern fruited sour beers. But as of July 2024, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced 410 different kinds of beer according to Untappd, and that number will no doubt continue to increase as time goes on. But yeah, that is everything I can really tell you about One Drop Brewing for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website, you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all of the different beers that these guys have done. But yeah, let's go on and actually have a little look at this beer itself. I'm just going to shift the camera a little bit because the angle was kind of annoying me there, but now it seems to be okay. But yeah, I'll just let you have a wee look at the artwork on this one before we open it up. As you can see, this is a little bit different to what we've seen from One Drop Brewing Company before. The last beer we reviewed from these guys was called Not Far From Jam Down, and that was awesome. But you know, pretty much all the sour beers you're going to get from One Drop will be very good. But there you can see the One Drop Brewing Company symbol there. You've got a nice kind of waxy sort of gun there. You can see the name there, Aim Into It, and it tells you at the bottom of the can here, this is a Lassie Gose. But this is a 440 milliliter can. It tells you a little bit about the beer on the side here as well. So it says Aim Into It, Lassie Gose. Aim Into It is a brand new Lassie style Gose straight out of our R&D project. Starting its life as an amplified kettle sour, we've dosed in some Aussie rock salt and given it our massive fresh fruit smoothie treatment. Big lashings of blueberry, raspberry, pineapple, marshmallow and maple syrup all meld perfectly to hit the mark on this out there concoction of deliciousness. So yeah, should be a really interesting one, this. As I mentioned earlier, the Gose is a German style of sour beer. So these beers are, you know, two of the original styles of sour beer are Berliner Weisse and Gose, and you know, they're both based on wheat. They've both got quite heavy wheat malt bases, but the Gose is a little bit different because what they used to do with that was put it into the basement. They used to put it into bottles, put salt into each bottle, and then the things would kind of foam over, and this was where they used to capture a lot of the wild yeast that would go down into the beer and ferment, and that was what gave the beer its sort of sourness. I forget what city Goses are from. I want to say Liechtenstein, potentially, in Germany, but yeah, the Gose is distinct from a lot of the modern sour beers because it has that little bit of salt in it. So yeah, you get a lot of breweries just calling their beers like fruited sours. Some of them will call them specifically Goses, but yeah, most of the sour beers we've had from One Drop Brewing thus far have just been called smoothie sours, where they put a lot of lactose and stuff like that in them. But this one also contains lactose, we should point that out. But yeah, I think this is going to be very nice. The thing that tells you on the side here, as I say, it's got blueberry, raspberry, pineapple and marshmallow in it, and a wee bit of maple syrup. So I think it should be really interesting. Plain black top on the can there as well. But yeah, let's get this guy out into the glass then and see what it's all about. I'm very, very curious to see what this beer will have for us. This is one that I actually got for free from Beer as well, because you get these little loyalty cards. So this beer was on the top shelf, meaning that it's eligible for the free beer cards, basically. So I decided, well, I was eyeing this one up. I hadn't bought it because I bought other things. So yeah, this one did finally get purchased with one of the loyalty cards. But yeah, as you often get with these One Drop sours, it's got this lovely, beautiful colour to it. You can see before the head disappears, I think, yeah, about a 2/3 finger of a frothy, I would say kind of, yeah, pink burgundy tinted head there. You can see that if I put it right up to the glass. You can see medium-sized bubbles on the surface of the liquid there with a few foamier ones going further up. And you can see this lovely sort of burgundy Heart of Midlothian football shirt colour beer, this one. But as you would expect from, One Drop Brewing, it's got this lovely kind of opaque character to it. That'll be down to the wheat and oats that are undoubtedly in this beer. You can see a few little bits of sediment in this one because this beer was in the fridge at Gur for a couple of weeks at least. But yeah, one or two big bubbles sticking toward the side of the glass, a few little ones going up toward the bottom of the head there. But overall, it looks very, very nice, this one. So remember, the colour of your beer is down to a few things. That's 1, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. 2, length of your wort boil is also going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise and thus you get a darker colour of beer. But any barrel aging that you do or adjuncts you put into the beer will affect its colour as well. And with modern sour beers like this, that is going to play a pretty big role. So I mean, this beer has it's raspberry and blueberry. Those are probably going to be the ones that give you this lovely burgundy colour that the beer has. So looks pretty nice, this one, I have to say. Pretty much kind of what you'd expect from a One Drop Brewing fruited sour beer. So I think we can go on and have a little look at the aroma and see what this beer is all about. I'm very, very curious about this, of course. That smells lovely. I think this is actually the first berry sour that I've had from these guys, because we had a number of like mango sours from them, and then the last one we did was like the dragon fruit sour, which was very good as well. So that's another reason I wanted to try this one, is because of the presence of the blueberries and the raspberries in it. But yeah, this is a really nice big berry sour actually. So aroma wise, it has the kind of typical richness that you expect of a One Drop sour, the big fruitiness, the big creaminess underneath, tiny little bit of green component, but you can definitely detect the maple syrup in this thing as well. So I'm just going to say straight away, the aroma of this one is absolutely lovely. So if you're into these big fruity juicy sour beers, this is one of the breweries you want to check out, and you are going to enjoy this one. I think that's fair to say, just from the aroma. But yeah, let's just break that aroma down then and describe it a wee bit more in depth for you, and see how we go. So yeah, backbone of this beer, you've got a lovely kind of fresh, kind of wholemeal, brown bready character there. There are little touches of woodiness in the malt base as well. But the way all of that goes together, I think, is really nice. So yeah, fresh brown bready bread crust, a little bit of woodiness, and then wee bits of cracker as well. But on top of that, you have some really nice kind of fresh wholemeal brown bread in there. Fresh wholemeal brown bread, and then on top of that, you start to get the white bready notes out of this one. So yeah, the white bread in this is really quite bright actually. The Australians, of course, have a lot of malt varieties of their own, so I'd be very curious to know whether One Drop are using imported malts from Europe or the US, or whether they're using local things. But the bready character on this one, the white bready note, has a lovely mix of smoothness, dryness, and a slight sweetness to it. Above that though, you can smell the kind of wheaty thickness out of the beer, because at the back of the nose you do get a little bit of that kind of wheaty bitiness. But overall, you can just smell that the wheat is kind of densifying out of this beer. It has that lovely big kind of smoothening effect. Very, very interesting. So, good little bit of wheaty character in this one. On top of that, you can smell the oats, of course, as well. So you've got that lovely big oaty creaminess. And if you sugar the beer up, you can smell a little bit of dryness out of the oats as well. And as I've often said, when it comes to IPAs, I don't know really so much in terms of the sour beers, but oaty character is usually a good indicator of how fresh your beer is, because the fresher your beer is, the creamier the oats are going to be, the older the beer is, the kind of drier they're going to be. But yeah, this beer has a really nice kind of oaty creaminess to it, a little touch of dryness as well, but within that you can smell that big, that sort of big maple syrupy, oily character. So the way that all of that kind of pieces together, I think, is really, really interesting. So yeah, big oily, sweet maple syrupy character mixing in with that, but you are getting a little bit of like a straight up sweet caramel, some Werther's Original, butter candy, butterscotch, and there's just a little bit of an almost biscuity character to this beer as well. So yeah, I do like the way that goes together. Yeah, the malty base on this one, that's the key thing about this beer, is the kind of sweetness that it has from the maple syrup, and in the top of the nose you do just get that little bit of saltiness that you would expect of the Gose, and it's quite a bright and almost slightly sharp saltiness that you get out of it. It must be the particular variety of salt, the Aussie rock salt that they've put in here. So yeah, on the malty side of things, this beer is pretty interesting. Now, beyond that, we need to talk about the hoppy side of the beer, or the green component, and the fruity side of things. So as I've said in many reviews before, if you go back to the old school Belgian sour beers, what they used to do with those was add older hops into them, because the older hop would lose a little bit of the alpha acid potency, and you don't want the sourness of the beer to be affected by the bitterness of the hop. So a number of a number of the old school Belgian breweries still stick to that practice, but amongst more modern sour beer producers, there's a little bit of a debate about whether you should use hops, because if you add them, you are going to get a little bit more of a complexity of flavour, whereas if you don't add them, you're not going to get that, but the fruity component of the beer is going to suppress the hops anyway. So yeah, this is the kind of circular question that you have when it comes to sour beer brewing. I do wonder about this beer though, because it comes across, it actually does have quite a little bit of green component to it, but it's quite smooth, and that would make me guess that potentially there's not any hop added to this beer. But I certainly get a little bit of earthiness, a little bit of herbal character, quite a bit of grassy and floral note out of this one though. But yeah, the way that it goes together is really nice. There's definitely a wee bit of that green component in this beer for sure. But then you move on to the fruity side of the beer, and it's very, very interesting. So for me, the fruity side of this one, it's kind of what you'd expect when you consider the fruits that are involved. You've got that big kind of sharpness from the raspberry in there, and that's kind of backed up by the blueberry. Those are the two things taking the fore. But in the backbone, you've got a bit of a kind of soft, juicy mango type characters. Yeah, soft, juicy mango. Was it pineapple that's in this as well? Because it really does smell like pineapple, I forgot. Yeah, pineapple definitely. It's marshmallow as well, actually. Interesting. So yeah, for me, I'm getting like, yeah, soft mango. The pineapple's definitely in there. There's a wee bit of an almost apricot-y character as well. But yeah, the marshmallow isn't something that I've really mentioned in the review so far. Maybe it's the suggestion, but you know, when you smell it, yeah, it kind of mixes in. The maple syrupy character is quite obvious in this one, but yeah, you can smell the maple syrup is mixed in with that. But yeah, the blueberry and raspberry are quite obvious in this one. The blueberry's kind of forming the base, the raspberry's giving you the kind of tartness. And yeah, you've got all that kind of juicy pineapple-y character underneath. Wee bits of like oily pear, wee bits of fig and things like that. So yeah, the aroma of this one is pretty interesting and a little bit unusual. Compared to what we've had from Drop Brewing before. But yeah, that maple syrup, the marshmallow of course is giving you some vanilla characteristics. There's a wee touch of nuttiness there, and yeah, you've got that kind of saltiness to the beer too. So yeah, the way everything goes together in this beer, I think, is really, really interesting, and it's definitely up there aroma wise with the other one drop sours that we've had before. So as I always say, take a little bit of time to just enjoy the aroma of the beer before you get stuck into it, but I think now is the time to taste this one. So yeah, this is the Aim Into It, a 5% Lassie Gose with marshmallow, maple syrup, blueberry, raspberry and pineapple from the wonderful One Drop Brewing Company in Botany, Sydney, Australia. Let's get stuck in. Slàinte, skål, cheers. Yeah, that's pretty damn good. As I've mentioned to you on the channel before, one of my favourite breweries in Sweden was Elm 11, and they were really, really good when it came to these kind of fruity, juicy sour beers. Duck Pond and Fermenterna were other ones from up to more toward Gothenburg, Göteborg. But yeah, One Drop, potentially those guys are even better than those ones that I've just mentioned. Like the One Drop fruity sour beers, they've got to be some of the best around. This one is as good as the smoothie sours that I've had from these guys, but I think I like the balance of this one a bit more, because you've just got a wee bit more of a kind of, you've got a little bit of that saltiness in there, you've got the brown sugar, but then you have all the other things that you get from the smoothie sour as well. So yeah, this is a beautiful, beautiful beer from One Drop. This could potentially be the best one that I've had from these guys, and I don't take that lightly, because, you know, Holy Hecka, not far from Jam Down, those were world-class beers as well. But this is really damn good. This is very, very good. Yeah, let's just break this beer down then and describe the flavour for you a wee bit more in depth, as we always do. So, yeah, these One Drop things are just crazy. Yeah, middle third of your palate then. The backbone of this beer, you can feel in the base, there's a little bit of that kind of smooth, I want to say white bready bread crust in there. Yeah, more of a white bready bread crust. As you go further forward on that middle third of your palate, there's a little touch of vanilla in there, and you get a nice little bit of that kind of crackery character in there. So yeah, fresh white bready bread crust, a little bit of vanilla almost, and a little bit, and then above that, yeah, you get this little bit of cracker. There's maybe a wee tiny hint of like a woody type character coming out of this beer as well. But yeah, the way everything goes together in this beer, I think, is really nice. I'm just going to put the rest of this in and let it mix, because you do get sediment and things with these beers. But yeah, beautiful stuff. So above the kind of slightly crackery layer that the beer has, you start to get some of the bready notes in this one. Above that, you start to get a kind of wholemeal, you get a little bit of a kind of wholemeal brown bready character in there, and it's quite sweet, but it's also quite smooth. And then you get the more white bready character out of this one. So yeah, you've got the sweet kind of smooth wholemeal brown bread in there, then you get the white bready character, and above that you can feel like a more dense white bready character, which is going to be the wheat. And I'm just trying to figure out, because there is a little bit of saltiness, and I'm just trying to think, is it like a kind of salty bready character that's in there? So yeah, I think you get a little bit of saltiness within the white bready characters within the beer, and that's quite interesting. But yeah, you also have above that the oatiness. So you get the dense white bready characters from the wheat, then there's the kind of oaty creaminess in there. And the oats are really interesting in this one, because if you go down that middle line of the tongue, you can feel that they're really, really creamy. But as you move out toward the edges of the palate, they just get that little bit drier. And the lactose, of course, is going to thicken all of this bready, wheaty and oaty creaminess up, actually. The beer almost does give you a little bit of an impression of like a petit filou yogurt in the middle of the palate. You've also got just this kind of yogurty character that lingers into the aftertaste, and I really like that, I have to admit. But yeah, there's a whole mix of stuff going on within that. But yeah, above the oaty kind of creaminess in there, you have, yeah, above the oaty creaminess, you have this the layers of brown sugar starting to come out. So yeah, you have the maple syrup in there, and so the maple syrup layer is kind of quite bright. It doesn't come across as too toasty or anything, but I feel the saltiness, the salt and the maple syrup in this beer are kind of mixing together. And so above that, you have a little bit of a more kind of, there's a little, above the maple syrup, you've got a little touch of like toasty caramel in there, but the dead centre of your palate with this beer is like a, the dead centre of your palate with this beer is like a straight up sweet caramel, and as you move out from that you get a little bit more of a kind of Werther's Original butter candy butterscotch, and all of that sits above the kind of salty maple syrupy type character that the beer has. So yeah, some really interesting things going on in the middle of your palate with this beer, and I think that's where the majority of the complexity is, in all honesty. But yeah, the middle third of your palate in this beer is absolutely lovely. You're not going to be disappointed with this one at all. In fact, the whole thing just makes you want to have more, in all honesty. So yeah, interesting stuff. There's maybe a tiny little bit of nuttiness or something comes out of that middle third of your palate the further into the aftertaste that you go, but yeah, I like that with this one. On the I think we can move on to the back third of your palate. As I've often said, sweeter flavours will come out further forward, more dry and bitter flavours will come out further back, and the middle third of your palate and the back third of your palate are going to have similar flavours, but they'll come out at different intensities. But yeah, the border region between middle and back third of your palate, you get a little bit of brown bread in the base, the white bread on top, then just a wee touch of bread crusty character there. But yeah, the base of that back third of your palate, the bread crusty character is just that little bit drier. You start to get a wee bit of the cracker above that as well. Then you've got the white bready layer, the brown bready layer, which feels a little bit lighter and more airy, a little touch sweet. Then the white bready layer, which feels a little bit lighter, more airy and more sweet as well. And then above all of that, you can feel some of the toasty brown sugars and some of the maple syrup just creeping over the top of that. And some of the saltiness as well, actually. I get quite a little bit of saltiness on that back third of the palate. Then you've got the yeasty side of the beer sitting at the top of that back third of your palate. So let's just look at that. So yeah, the yeasty side of this beer, for me, it's quite yogurty in a sense, like maybe in the middle of that yeasty side of things, you've got a sweet kind of brown bread in there, but it feels like it's wrapped in a sort of almost like slightly caramelly, toasty brown sugar, yogurty kind of characters. Yeah, sweet brown bread there, yogurty character on the edge, and then maybe just a toasty brown sugar around that. But for me, that's the kind of character you're getting from the yeasty side of things with this beer, and there's quite a fair bit of saltiness on that back third of the palate as well. So yeah, really interesting flavour combination this one, but definitely back third of the palate you can feel is taller. Then as you move further forward into the middle third of your palate, it just kind of condenses down and squashes together. But yeah, I think we've covered everything about the malty and yeasty side of the beer. Let's go on to the sort of hoppy side of things, so the green component, the placebo effect as it will probably be in this case, and then the fruity side of the beer. So yeah, back corners of the palate you do get a little touch of earthiness there. It's a little bit herbal as you move further forward, and you can feel that it gradually gets a little bit more floral the further forward on the sides of the palate that you go. So there could be a little touch of hop in this one, but if there is, I really don't think it's all that much. But yeah, a little bit of floral character there on the front corners of the palate, then round the front curve of the tongue it's got a wee bit of grassiness, and it's almost just a little touch zesty in a sense. So yeah, the way that all of that kind of pieces together, I think, is very, very interesting. So yeah, beyond this, you have to talk about the fruity side of things. So let's look at that front third of your palate then, and the fruity side of the beer, just to round off. So the border region between front third and middle third of your palate, again, you get a little bit of that bready build up in there. There's the kind of brown bready character underneath, the white bready character in there. Then on top of that, you've got a wee bit of the maple syrup. You do get a bit of saltiness in this bready build up layer. But yeah, the base of that front third of your palate, you've got the bread crust in, the bread crusty character in there, the kind of crackery sort of notes, wholemeal brown bread, smooth white bread. Then yeah, you get the cream and you get the sort of wheat and the oaty character above that. Then you get that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters would roll their way out of the hops. In this case, I'm I don't think there is hops in this beer. If there is, there's just a very kind of small amount. But the fruity side of this one is pretty straightforward. I mean, the pineapple, I mean, if there is any fruit from the hoppy side of things, it's going to be like a kind of sultana, oily pear. But the pineapple, I think, is the one that kind of sits there on top of that front third of the palate and gives you the kind of oily, tropical type note out of the beer. But the blueberries and the raspberries in this one, they give you, yeah, they're the ones giving you a lot of the tartness and a lot of the juiciness of the beer. And I think there's a really nice balance actually between both the raspberry and the blueberry. It's a very, very nice ratio or blend or whatever. I'd be curious to see what the brew sheet of this one was and see what they've actually done with this beer. But yeah, I think the blueberry kind of sits on top of the pineapple and gives you the kind of juiciness, and the raspberry is the one that sits on top and gives you a wee bit more of the tartness. But the raspberries in this beer are quite oily, and both blueberries and raspberries are quite widely produced in Scotland, and I think the Scottish ones are just that little bit more tart. These are actually quite oily and quite juicy for me, and I think that works with the overall vibe of the beer, especially when it's got that maple syrup and that salty element to it. But yeah, I think this is a really, really nicely done Lassie Gose, and if One Drop are tempted to play a little bit more with this particular sub style, whatever it is, then I think this could be a really interesting route for them to take, because their fruity smoothie sours are already very, very good. But yeah, this beer gets a massive thumbs up from me in terms of its flavour. Let's just round off the review then with a wee look at the mouthfeel. So yeah, mouthfeel wise for me, this beer, full bodied, carbonation is very, very smooth. This one kind of finds some sort of balance between being really oily and slick and also being really creamy underneath, and I think that suits the style of beer that it has. It has that little bit of saltiness to it as well. In terms of the IBU count, it's probably going to be very, very close to 0, so like 5 IBUs at the absolute most. The malty base in this one, you've got the graininess underneath, the smoothness on top, and then the nice little bit of oily, sweet character, just kind of rounding it all off, and the saltiness in there just giving you that almost salted caramel flavour. But then yeah, the fruitiness of this one is great. You've got a little bit of impact flavour, lovely kind of juicy fruity notes, and yeah, a mix of tropical fruit and berry in there. This is a beautiful, beautiful beer, this one. And if One Drop are trying doing these Lassie Gose as an experiment, I think they've got a very, very solid base to work from there. Yeah, difficult to see how they could improve on it, right enough, because this is that good already. But yeah, I think if they do want to do more of these, they're probably going to do them very, very well. So yeah, I think we can leave it at that for this one. This is yet another one that kind of shows me that One Drop Brewing are one of the best modern fruity smoothie sour breweries around, and they're definitely up there. In terms of Lassie Goses, this one is definitely up there, on the same level, if not better, than what I had from Omnipollo in recent times. So yeah, I think we can leave it at that for this one. This was the Aim Into It, a 5% Lassie Gose from the wonderful One Drop Brewing in Botany in Sydney, New South Wales, Australia. So yeah, once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comments section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from One Drop Brewing Company as well, and we will no doubt return to these guys again at some point in the near future. But until then, slàinte, skål, cheers, and I'll see you guys in the next review. Make sure you check out One Drop and have a go at some of these smoothie sours. They are incredible, really good stuff.